Welcome to Radio VTV.
I'm Ladyfingers.
I'm DJ Dynamite.
The four elements of Radio VTV are science, art, music, and charity.
We have an exciting show for you today. Let's kick things off with KCJ.
Wow, that was incredible. I have never heard the harmonica work that way. Wow.
Yeah, KCJ, he's the man.
Whew. So, today's show is special for you, right, Dynamite?
That's right. Today is the third episode of Radio VTV, and for me, 3 is the magic number.
Yes, it is. True, true, true. All right, we'll start with the art and check out the amazing concert posters from artist Matt Leunig.
That's right. We're going to go see a live concert by Tell Me.
Ooh. For science, Professor Dynamite McGillicuddy explores music theory with instructor Aaron Katz.
And we have something special planned for the charity today. We'll get into it in a little bit.
All this and more music here for the third episode of Radio VTV. Hey, Dynamite, hit him with the theme song.
You are watching Radio VTV. Music Charity.
This is Radio VTV. I'm your host, DJ Dynamite, and I'm pleased to announce that I'm joined with Matt Leunig. How are you, Matt?
I'm good. Hello, old friend.
Good to see you. Did I get your last name exactly right? I found out I was saying Wahab's name wrong this whole time.
Leunig.
Leunig. Okay, so I was wrong this whole time.
That's all right.
Of Scrape Knee Art.
Yep.
So you have a freelance business where you primarily create posters for events.
Yeah, I like to call it, basically, for the last almost 20 years, I've been running my own little illustration studio, where primarily most of my work, I've been doing work for bands, doing merch, concert posters, stuff like that. Which is, gets you into a bunch of free shows and.
So cool. So how did you get into doing the freelance work and getting the contracts?
Well, originally, so when I started, I lived out in the Bay Area, and I kind of got into the video game industry. So I was working that for a while. But always on the side, I thought I was going to get into doing comics. I was always kind of doing art. Ever since I was a little kid and trying to find the avenue that fit for me. I thought I was going to be doing indie comics. I tried my hand at animation and interned at like an animation studio and nothing really fit. But I was always the guy that never played an instrument, but did my friends' band's flyers. And then when I moved out to San Francisco, like I'd always kind of had an eye and I always loved the posters of the 60s, like the San Francisco, the Fillmore posters. And, I ended up kind of getting a gig to do a poster for the Fillmore. And back in the day, you used to be able to just kind of ask the venue, hey, can I do a poster? And they'd say, hey, yeah, we'll send you an email. Email the band and ask them. And they just give you the band's info. And half the time you'd have to end up sitting at the table and selling it with them. And most of the time you'd lose a lot of money, and you had to pay for the printing. You had to do all that stuff. But over time, you just kind of keep doing that. And some band will say, hey, we're coming back in May. You want to do a poster? Or, hey, our record label also represents this person. Can you do a poster for them? And it just kind of snowballs, and your name kind of gets out there. You become known as the San Francisco person, for this specific band to do posters. But honestly, I ended up getting a gig really early on with this band Widespread Panic, which is huge in the jam band scene and has like this massive poster following. So like like I said, I've been doing posters for 20 years, and my first poster for them was 19 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I got spoiled out the gate, and like they kind of helped set me up, and bigger bands kind of saw my stuff. So yeah, now I've been doing this for a while now.
So cool. So how did the Primus thing happen?
Primus, they were another band that I had done a poster for. My first Primus poster was New Year's in 2011 or 10. And, they were a Bay Area band that we would see all the time around. And, I always had this thing where it would almost be like there'd be a gap of 2 or 3 years before my next Primus poster. And it sometimes it comes down to who's in charge of the merch at the moment for that band. But for the last, I don't know, now 7-8 years, I've been kind of working with them primarily. Like every tour, I try to work with them, and I don't know. They're like one of the lasting bands that I still know. A lot of them, a lot of the bands that I want to do posters for don't exist anymore. So.
They did the way. So now you have kind of a West Coast, East Coast event that happens every year.
Yeah, so I'm part of a group that is out of San Francisco called TRPS. It's like TRPS, which is the Rock Poster Society. And they're a group that kind of first they have a huge show every October in San Francisco in Golden Gate Park. And what's different about them is they kind of are champions of the old 60s rock poster artists. For the Fillmore, Wes Wilson, Victor Moscoso, all these names, all the people who did art for the Grateful Dead, who now are kind of older. So it's also a nonprofit where they collect donations, and you can become a member, and the money goes to a lot of these older artists, and for legal issues where in the past they didn't get the best deals or the rights to their artwork, or now health issues. But it's this really great organization. And then I actually now live in Atlanta, and I moved here 7 years ago, and opened up kind of an Atlanta chapter of that group, and do the Atlanta Rock Poster Show every year in February.
So cool. Well, if you're in Atlanta, check out that in February, and if you're in the Bay, make sure you check it out. It's every October. It's every October.
Yep.
And then where can people find more of your art at?
Scraped Knee is the name of my studio. So scrapeknee.com is my website. Aside from like putting up posters, I haven't touched that thing in a while. I don't do blogs or anything like that. So I would say either Instagram is usually my most updated. So it's just my name, Matt Leunig.
That's Leunig.
Yeah, on Instagram.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. We really appreciate it. We're giant fans of
Absolutely.
your art here. So thank you very much.
Anytime.
Woo-wee! I love his artwork. Hand-painted artwork. That Erykah Badu Egyptian kitty, though, that's sick.
Yeah, Matt is one of my favorite all-time living artists. It's a dream come true to include him on the show. And I'm grateful he was nice enough to do this and share his awesome art.
Now, a word from our sponsor. To the handsome chums of MHA for sponsoring Radio VTV.
Agreed. We really truly appreciate the support.
Up next, we go to Up the Creek Records for a show by Tell Me, Tell Me.
We have so much. Many more of it. How you defend the probably priceless things. I didn't know the taking, even on the taking. We've been overtaken. How you, the doors keep closing on us so fast. Functions of the other. How to defend the probably priceless things. We don't even know about all the fires simmering below, just a little bit. Haven't even felt that the hunger's gone missing. The appetite to fill the hole where ready to go. For nothing to die of breathe fire, breathe in the air, the pain.
had to have them on my radio show, I thought the band was a four-piece, you know? Drummer, guitar, bassist, keyboards. Then when they showed up to the studio, there was two of them. And I was like, where's the rest of the band? They couldn't make it. And turns out Michael runs his acoustic guitar through a bass amp and a guitar amp with different pedals attached to each amp.
Wow. I wouldn't have believed it had I not just seen it. Hey, fun fact.
Tell Me consists of two cousins that have been making music together since childhood.
Would you like to learn more?
Go to tellmetellme.bandcamp.com.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
I always thought that I learned colors wrong, but as I grew older, that's when the doctor confirmed that I was colorblind. So today, we're opening up these glasses that my dad bought for me for my birthday. They're made by a company called Chroma. Such a difference.
They worked.
Thank you to Chroma for the show sponsorship.
Oh, for sure. If your business is interested in advertising on Radio VTV, contact our Chief Operations Officer at radiovtv.sm@proton.me.
Let's check in with Professor Dinah Matt McGillicuddy as he discusses music theory with instructor Aaron Katz.
Welcome back to the Couch of Science. Today we are joined by Doug Mandu and a discussion on music theory. And we're going to have Chris help us out a little bit with this. How are you, Doug Mandu?
I'm doing good. How are you, Matt? It's good to see you after all these years.
It's great to team up with you again. So for this, do you prefer Doug Mandu or Aaron?
Yeah, why don't let's go with Aaron Katz. Why don't we? K-A-T-Z, Aaron Katz.
All right, so we are joined today with teacher, Professor Eric Katz.
Indeed.
There we go. And I am Professor Dynamite McGillicuddy.
Yes,
and
you are.
We have Dr. O'Grady on guitar. So, so you got so for people who have heard the term music theory but don't know anything about it, how would you describe it?
Well, it's an extremely broad term that could explain anything but the language of music itself, which is of course different for every kind of music around the world. They say music is a universal language, but they're wrong. It's not a universal language. The different musics of the world are different languages, just as are the different languages that we speak, and they have their own rules and their own music theory. So. But that would be just the sort of grammatical side of music theory. There's another side of music theory which deals with more scientific matters, like why do strings sound the way they do, and why do we tune instruments the way we do. This interacts with the language, but it could also be included within music theory. So.
Okay. So it's a broad term that has many definitions.
Correct.
We'll go with the American music term.
Sure. Well, what I'm actually going to talk about today is why music is broken and can never be fixed.
Okay.
And this is because of the problems of tuning the scales that we use. And the tuning of scales has evolved over many hundreds of years in order to account for different situations. And a lot of the things that we were trying to get in terms of the sound of these scales, it's when you put it together with other things we're trying to do, you just end up with a series of compromises that just ruin everything. And that's where we are today. The music we listen to today, it's completely ruined. So let me get to the details of why this is.
Why music is ruined.
Why music is ruined. So the first feature we have in music, and I can do this part, although I can use some help as well, is when you take a string. No, this is better on the string. Let's do this on the string. By the way, if I talk too fast, slow me down. I get excited. So,
No. Go ahead.
So, so let's look at a string. Why don't you play me the note A, for instance, on the A string. Now that note A, that's vibrating 111 times a second. When you vibrate the air up to a certain speed, you start hearing pitches, and that's what you're hearing. You're hearing the pitch A. Now, why don't you play us one octave above that at the 12th fret? So that note is A vibrating at 220 times a second. And in fact, if he could play those two A's together, or even octave A's together, why don't we play me an octave A somewhere? Now try to pluck them try to pluck them at the same time. Now you'll notice when you play the octave together at the same time, it almost sounds like one note. You can barely even tell that it's two notes, and that's because the 111 times a second and the 220 times a second synchronize. They're in phase so nicely that you can barely perceive that it's even two different notes, right? This is what we call a pure interval. The ratio of the octave to the fundamental is 2/1. And this is possibly the most fundamental interval there is. Little kids sing at higher octaves. Women typically sing at higher octaves than men. It all sounds like the same note. Everyone can sing it together, and it's as if they're singing the same note. No one has any problem with this. So the modern tuning system that we use on something like an accordion or a guitar, what they do is they divide that octave into 12 equal half steps. And the distance, the ratio between any two half steps is exactly the same. So for instance, if I play this chromatic scale, the distance between each of those half steps is exactly the 12th root of 2/1. That's the number that if you multiply it by itself 12 times, it will equal 2. And the reason it's such a weird ratio is it has to get you right to the number 2, right? So if you take 111 and multiply that, 110 for the low A here, and you multiply that by 1.059, whatever the 12th root of 2 is, it will, after 12 iterations, get you right to 2.0, the octave. Now, this tuning system is relatively recent historically, because in the past, music wasn't trying to do anything as weird as finding the 12th root of 2. It wasn't even possible mathematically before the late 1500s. People didn't even know how to calculate this. So what they were really looking for was pure intervals. Now, we've already talked about the first pure interval. That's 2/1. We still have that one. It's still 2/1. It's perfect. Then you get into the other pure intervals. The first one is 3/2. And that's the interval of a pure fifth. What do you play as a pure fifth? And you hear that sounds pretty nice, right? It just goes together. The next interval is going to be the 4/3, and that's going to give us a pure fourth when you play as a fourth. This is perfect for guitar because guitars are tuned in fourths, right? And then we get into the thirds. The major third is, at least theoretically, it's 5/4. Now, I don't know if you can hear this, but you'll notice that with the distortion on, that interval doesn't sound as pure, right? And it's because it isn't. So, maybe let's just try it. Let's see if you can go from the G string to the B string. And tune the B string slightly flat. We'll try to get it to be a pure third. It's somewhere there where it stops beating, right? So the quality you get from the pure intervals is there's no beats, right? So if you find your pure interval, and you've heard this when you listen to guitars tune, they'll find that pure interval, and as they're slightly out of tune, you start hearing womp, why you hear that beating. So what they're trying to do when they tune their instruments is to get rid of the beating, right? Now, the problem is that third is nowhere on the 12-note square root of 2 system. It's completely out of tune. Now, let's go into how these tunings evolved historically. And let me look at my notes here. So, the real problem comes when you have keyboards. Because keyboards, you can't change the notes. If you're playing a non-fretted instrument or if you're singing, you can adjust your notes to get the intervals to be pure. So, one of the oldest systems that use pure intervals is a system called Pythagorean tuning, and it was devised about 500 BC. And what Pythagoras, or what his followers actually would do, is they would tune around to perfect fifths, perfect 3-to-2 ratios, nice pure tone. And they only needed to get to 7 notes. They weren't worried about all 12 notes back then. And that was a reasonably nice system to give you a bunch of pure intervals. The thing is, the music back then didn't use harmonies the way we do. They didn't sing more than one note at once, maybe a little bit in fifths, but it wasn't like today where we have all kinds of chords and harmonies, mostly melodic music, right? Now, the first problem they ran into with Pythagorean tuning is that if you tune your fifths around, we'll start at C, and go to G, and go to D, and go to A, and then you end up at E. You end up at E, that note is not a pure third from G. And what happened in Western music after about 1450 or so is they started to really play with those thirds. So they weren't as interested anymore in having the fifths be pure. Now they wanted the thirds to be pure. But it turns out this is a conflict. If you tune your keyboard so that your thirds are pure, then the fifths are out of tune. But they kind of went with that. And what they ended up with by the late 1500s is a system called mean tone tuning. So what they would do is they would get all the thirds pure, and they would tune all the fifths slightly flat, and they would just kind of give that up, but close enough, right? And meanwhile, the music was focusing more on the sound of those pure thirds. Now the problem is that if you tune your keyboard so that your thirds in C major are pure, you can probably tune it so keys that are close to C also have pure thirds. So G might have pure thirds, F might have pure thirds, but you get to any more distant keys and things start sounding awful. So in mean tone tuning, you have 8 pure thirds, you have 8 all right fifths, they're all flattened a bit, and then you have 4 thirds and 4 fifths that sound god-awful. So you're really restricted in the kind of music you write to staying close to a certain key. But that's the kind of music they wrote at the time. They didn't stray too far from the key. So, let me make sure I'm not skipping over anything. Okay, so then there's the concept of the comma. And these are names for the various discrepancies that you have between different tuning systems. So, one of the most famous is the Pythagorean comma. So if you tune all your fifths pure and you end up back at C, how far is that from the 2-to-1 octave that we really want? Well, it turns out it's about a quarter of a half step off. It's too sharp by what we call cents, 24 cents. That's 1/100th of a equal tempered half step. And that's pretty far off. It's like the ear will not tolerate that amount of detune. There's other commas too. Probably the most important comma is the difference between a pure third, C to E, and the note that you get if you use Pythagorean tuning together. Go around the circle of fifths and end up on E. That's also almost a quarter of a half step off. It's 21.4 cents off. And these commas become the whole problem with how are we going to tune our keyboard instruments. Because no matter what system you use, there's some kind of a comma. Something doesn't match up. So, what are your solutions to this? Well, keep your music on one key, use just tuning, have all your intervals be pure. That's a solution. Or you can start to do what they call tempering. And that's where you do the things like, let's make all the fifths a little flat, not too flat, keep it tolerable. And that's when they start coming out with all these tempering systems, including mean tone temperament. So none of these earlier systems allow you to play satisfactorily in all 12 keys. They kind of allow you to hang out relatively close to one key. Somewhere around the mid-late 1600s, there was an interaction between composers and music theorists. They were trying to come up with tuning systems that allowed you to play in all the keys. And they started coming up with systems that are called well temperaments. This is not equal temperament. It's just tuning systems where you could play in any key, and the keys might sound different. Like F sharp might sound really different from C, but it would still sound tolerable and musical, right? And the first major well temperament was a system called Werkmeister III by a composer theorist named Werkmeister. And organist and composer named Buxtehude, who was J.S. Bach's big hero, adopted this temperament. And in his compositions, he was starting to modulate to much more distant keys that required these kinds of temperaments. Now here's the conflict. The joy of musical sound had been these pure intervals, right? And with these new well temperaments, most of them, they might have a couple pure intervals, like, okay, we'll have this fifth be pure, the thirds are all going to be completely off, you know. There are basically these strange compromises that end up bargaining away some of the foundational sounds of music up to that point. The perfect sonority between intervals. Now, on a guitar, you can actually hear these pure intervals by playing through the harmonic series. Because the thing about all these pure intervals is they occur naturally on any vibrating string. So for instance, if you play the low E, that's just our fundamental. And now if you lightly touch the 12th fret, you'll get the first harmonic. Wait, that's the 5th. That's the, go to the 12th fret, right? Yeah, that's it, right. And then you get the next harmonic, the 5th. Yeah, exactly. And then next harmonic. Yeah. And then the next one's a little further up there. Yeah. So those harmonics give you these pure tones that we never hear anymore. And you could actually, some guitarists cleverly play them at the same time with other harmonics, or you could play it with another guitarist, and you would hear these pure intervals. And they are not present on the new equal tempered system. So what happens is in the 1700s, Bach and many people start pushing these well temperaments, which sound awful to the older style composers that like their pure intervals. People would rant against these new tuning systems. They're like, it's like forcing you to eat rotten meat and telling me that's going to taste good. Like you can tell me that it does. And so they were basically making this huge compromise with the fundamental sound of music, essentially just so they could change keys to more distant keys and play more complex, more chromatic music. It was interacting with the composition, it was interacting with the technology of the organs and how keyboard instruments were tuned. By the 1800s, you're starting to go past even these well-tempered systems and starting to go at least into the ideal of equal temperament. And this is where you have, 12th root of 2. Now, accomplishing equal temperament by ear is not that easy. You have to have a really good ear to get these equal tempered half steps correct. And calculating the 12th root of 2 over 1 in terms of an interval, I'm sure there's piano tuners that can do this, but it really waits for the invention of these tuning systems, the little strobe piano tuners. I don't know if anyone remembers these things from when they were kids. They still used to use them that get you to the exact pitches that you want to get when you're tuning a piano.
Oh, that is so cool. Okay, there we go. Am I back on? There we go. This has been so much more fascinating than I had any anticipation of, and way more math than I was expecting. I feel like we've hit the mark, and I think we need to do a part 2 coming up.
Okay.
So definitely write in and tell us what you think about Aaron and his awesome stuff, and then we'll have Aaron back on in a few episodes for part 2 of music theory.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Wow, I have been doing music my entire life and have learned so very much.
Yeah, it was exciting to have Aaron do the intro to music theory. He did not disappoint.
So, to follow Radio VTV on social media, go to facebook.com/Radio Voices Berkeley.
Yeah, and at Instagram /Radio Voices FM.
Now, a word from our sponsor. Was that an advertisement for a log?
Not just any log. Log by Plamo.
I heard there's a story behind the next piece.
Yeah, so this one's... So I do volunteer work pretty much every week, and I knew I wanted to incorporate charity into Radio V. And at first I was like, I'll just go one for one. I can just, put video of whatever. But then as I thought about it, a lot of the charity work I do would be pretty boring. I'm making a phone call, I'm driving to a place, I'm picking up a box, I'm sorting out the stuff, and then I'm dropping it off. Not exactly riveting video. And then I started thinking some of the stuff I do, say if I'm doing a feeding for unhoused people, and then I handed them a sandwich, and I'm like, hey, can I videotape you with this sandwich? I felt like that would be a bit intrusive and a little bit not in the right spirit of things.
Yeah.
And so then I thought, well, if my own charity doesn't fit with the charity of the show, what is the definition of the charity of the show? And then I thought, maybe the show itself can do charity.
I like it.
And so I was like, it doesn't have to be mine. It could be anybody's. It could be people who are out there helping other people. It could be people who are, say they've got a location that teaches history and makes it accessible to the public. Or a 501c3. These all seemed to me yeah, all right, that works. And so then I was like, museums. Local museums could use some attention, and
absolutely
some support. So then I kept having this vision of what I wanted Radio V to look like, and I knew I wanted to incorporate this Egyptian museum. And then I went to the museum, but this is before the first show came out, and so they didn't want to do an interview with me because it was too new and I didn't have anything to show.
Sure.
And so I took footage around the museum of everything publicly accessible. And I wrote a script. And then I had everybody over for the party, the accordion player, the scientist with the guitar.
Yeah.
And I was like, y'all want to jam and help me create a score for this video? And so, so that's what you're about to see. I'm excited. First take.
While studying different subjects over the years, I was repeatedly directed towards the museum in the South Bay. You see, I was researching Egyptology and learning more about my art and culture, and saw this online place that had relevant artifacts on display. I was researching ancient massive stone masonry and found out this museum contains Egyptian and Sumerian tools. While researching one subject, it became apparent to study parts of a related subject, and yet this museum has artifacts related to both subjects. When I envisioned what my show would look like, I kept thinking of a feature of this museum. And finally, I visited the Egyptian Museum in San Jose. And everything I hoped to see was there on display. Did you see, I was not aware of how beautiful, expansive, and elaborate the grounds of the museum would be until seeing the windows. So if you are into Egyptology, architecture, history,
So, they should really make that their commercial to entice people to go there.
Yeah, what's on the outside is beautiful that you got to see, but I highly recommend going to the museum and checking it out.
That was a really fun show. You went to town on this one.
That's because 3 is the magic number.
True, true, true. So, today we saw the beautiful artwork of Matt Leunig, witness a performance by the incredible Tell Me, learn more about music theory than I ever knew from Mr. Aaron Katz, and got to go to an Egyptian museum. That was dope.
It was a fun show. I want to thank Cookie Wolf for being mic stand number 2 for Casey's performance.
Lovely mic stand she was. And thank you to Up the Creek Records in Walnut Creek for letting us film Tell Me.
Thank you to Chris from Vertison Art Materializer for helping out with the music theory segment.
And thank you to Bijanette, Aaron, Will, and Chris for improvising with Dynamat for the Egyptian Museum. You killed it.
I want to thank Ladyfingers for co-hosting with me today.
Want to learn more?
Check out www.ladyfingers.com to hear the latest album, Cosmic Casa.
Heyo.
Yeah. If you've been watching the shows since the beginning and returning, we want to let you know you are most welcome here.
And if this is your first time, thank you for tuning in. We have more shows coming up, and we know you're going to enjoy it.
You're watching Radio VTV.